Hello and welcome to an episode of our epic X-Men reread here at Crushing Comics. I'm here with my two friends, Tyler and Fariha. Tyler, a longtime X-Men lover like myself. Fariha, a somewhat newer mutant, although she's very experienced in the mutant stories as of late. But this is her first time going through Claremontian X-Men, and we have come to a hugely important story today. It's Claremont's first saga. It is Uncanny X-Men 125 through 128, which is the Proteus Saga. And this comes with a massive disclaimer. Part of why we even started doing this together was we all got together and talked about Jonathan Hickman's Powers of X and House of X in 2019. These issues are hugely, hugely important to Hickman's story and House of X and Powers of X, and we're going to be talking about them through a filter of House of X and Powers of X. We're going to spoil those stories thoroughly. We're going to try to not talk about anything past that. But if you have not read House of X and Powers of X, you've got to do it now before you listen to the rest of this episode. Also, we'll be talking about Classic X-Men 24, which we skipped earlier. You'll see why. And Classic X-Men 32 and 33, which occur during these issues.
I might spoil something on X of Swords, but I will give ample spoiler warnings first. It's just one small bit of it.
Okay, so for those of you listening at 2x speed, we're gonna give you at least one whole second at 2x speed.
I'm gonna be like spoiler.
Hold on. Is it from X-Men 32? Like Classic 32? Yes. Is that from? Yes, I thought that. Okay, you and I are on the same because when I read that I'm like, they stole it from here.
Okay.
Yes.
Revelations await. Tyler and Fariha have something that I'm not in on. I'm nervous.
We'll give you warning.
We'll give spoiler warnings.
Yes. In addition to our spoiler warnings for this episode, we do also have to give you a content warning. Some of the material in this issue hits very specifically at a past of a certain character's life that includes certainly domestic violence and possibly some sexual violence. And we get into a discussion of that and the implications of that on the plot. And we do mention some specifics in related to both of those kinds of violence. So we understand that for some of you, that might not be a safe discussion for you to be a part of. And we completely understand that we might be seeing you next episode because that is throughout the episode. It's not something that we can just say, skip to timecode X and get past it. So do what you need to do to be well and be safe. And hopefully you'll join us. But if you can't, we'll see you again next time. Tyler actually had a question for us today, or was it Fariha? Fariha, did you have a question?
I did. Yeah.
Question. So why don't you go ahead and ask?
So my question was that what is one property, and it could be books, movies, TV series, what have you, that you have been meaning to consume your entire lives and you still haven't gotten around to?
Well, Tyler traditionally goes first.
Okay, I'll go first. I think one particular science fiction television series that I really want to watch from beginning to end, which I have not been able to do. I think I've always done like several episodes, or I did a stretch of like first season and then somehow I just did not continue. And that is Farscape.
I've never seen
that's a
Farscape.
really older science fiction series, but I mean it gets really strange in the middle, and and a lot of science fiction shows are not very science fiction-y, and this one is science fiction-y and fantasy too. So I really enjoyed it. I mean, at least for those episodes that I've seen, but there were like towards the end, I think the second half of it, which I think became a lot more serialized than episoded. That is the part which I have not really gotten into, because every time I wanted to start from the beginning, and then for some reason after the first and a half season, I stopped.
The one thing that really always is on my shelf, it's actually within arm's reach here, is Hellboy. I have everything Hellboy because I picked up the library editions. It was actually my first order from IST in stock trades back in, I'm so embarrassed to say, 2014 when I switched to them. And I have never been farther than the end of the first library edition because in my head, I want to like sit down and do a big read of all of it sequentially. But that's just not how I do things. Like I occasionally will read something that's 30 issues long, like Monstrous or like a big hunk of Saga or something. But for me to read 30 plus issues without interrupting them for whatever came out that week. That just doesn't happen. So it's like, it's been 7 years. I'm waiting for something that will never occur, which is that I'm going to take a complete break from new comics for weeks to read all of Hellboy. And it's all in my house. I might not even like it. I just keep buying because I don't want to miss out on any of it. And so I just have this huge Hellboy shelf, of which I've read the first story, which I really like. And I told myself I was going to do it during lockdown. I had that book right next to my bed collecting dust with its fuzzy cover, which makes me crazy. And I read the first book again and then didn't continue to the second book. So maybe 2021 is my year. I just need somebody to read it with to do a video. That's the way to motivate me to do these things.
Let's do an epic reread.
Epic Hellboy read.
Yeah.
So I read every one of them in 2019, like from start to finish. So I know all of it.
So you are the expert because I have not read BPRD.
Oh yeah, I'm the expert. I read all of it, and the BPRD Plague of Frogs is where it's at. Like
the whole Fariha not an expert thing is an illusion of this program, because in almost everything other than like fundamental mutant X-Men nonsense, and then also some Wonder Woman, Fariha knows more than me. Like in every other possible, because she's read everything. She reads so much faster than me. So it's only this one topic where I get to be really the expert. Fariha gets to be the new mutant.
And you're probably going to lose that soon, as you're forcing me to read this. I'm going to read this.
There's no forcing, because I've seen your to-read pile of 2000s and 2010s X-Men. Nobody's twisting your arm.
I know. It's like, oh, okay, fine, I'll read it. Stop twisting my arm. I'm just doing it that way. So for me, it's actually Astro City by Kurt Busiek.
Oh, that's a great one I've always wanted to read.
You should read that.
Yeah, so the thing is, like, I had it all on my Hoopla. That is the free library service. Like, if you have a library card, you can go to Hoopla and you can borrow books. Hoopla had them all. Then when I was getting ready to read them, Hoopla took them off. And now they're back in Hoopla. And then there's apparently some chatter about it going to one of the publisher, because now it's publisher-less, and potentially an omnibus format and stuff. So I'm like, should I wait or should I read it? So it's one of those things that I have been thinking about reading it since I started reading comics hardcore, and I still haven't gotten around to it.
I've only ever read, I think, the first 3 or 6 issues. It's one of those ones that's been forever on my to-read list. So that could be even more content. I don't know if any of us are volunteering to watch Farscape with Tyler, but I would watch a little. I would sample, but I don't really binge TV.
Farscape, I think, I just checked. The original release was March 1999.
99? So it's new.
Yeah,
it's not that old, Yeah,
because I have a problem with watching like television, like bad CGI in television, which hasn't improved all that much. But
this has not so much of a CGI, but more animatics. So puppeting.
Yeah.
So
maybe.
You
never know, Tyler.
Maybe fans demand it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do this episode a little bit differently than we usually do reread, because this is the first time we've gotten to like a chunk of Claremont issues where they all go together. So we don't really feel like we have to go issue by issue, although we will talk about the major beats and all the issues. But we cannot help but talk about the Proteus Saga without talking about Moira MacTaggert. And Moira MacTaggert was at the center of it to begin with. This was historically the big Moira MacTaggert story. But now it's made even bigger because of revelations in Jonathan Hickman's House of X and Powers of X. This is your last warning. So we know now that this is Moira's 10th life. And we know now that this... she planned to have Proteus. We went and reread Powers of X6, and we see from her diary that her and Xavier go out to make more mutants, so to speak, because they realize that they need reality warping mutants, and Moira realizes that she probably has enough know-how to pick their partners. So the big theme I really think we need to talk about before we talk about anything in the issues is Hickman has turned Moira from a mutant ally to a member of the community. She used to be like Mutant's mom. She was in Mutant Pride Club, right? But now she is a mutant, and Proteus was her specific doing. And instead of just trying to contain this rogue Proteus who's running rampant, now at least for me, the impression I get from the story is she's containing him because he's putting her plan at risk. And it tracks perfectly to everything we know about her now. Sometimes she's like, I've got to kill him. I have no choice. Sometimes she's like, you can kill me rather than do the thing you're planning. She's teetering on this delicate balance of like, don't mess up the 10th life for me, son, but also don't ruin everything for mutants. I know how these actions could reverberate. I really am so interested to hear both of your reactions, because this is pretty much why we started doing this X-Men reread. Fariha, since you haven't read it before and don't have that kind of baggage that Tyler and I have, I'm very interested to hear what you think about that.
So, I mean, it's all good. Like, I mean, as I was reading it, because I don't think I would have been as excited about reading this without like the Hoxpox recontextualization or whatever you call it. For that, I was like, ooh, tell me more. And we now know that he's pink. He's in a pink, a more suit-fitted blob format. And then also he's now one of the ones that is helping to bring back mutants.
As was her plan.
Yeah. And also over here, he's just eradicating humans or anyone in his path, left, right, and center. But now he's a life bringer, so to speak. There's
he's still consuming husk. He's consuming Xavier's husk.
Oh.
So they were creating Xavier husk, without Xavier's mind for Proteus to consume.
Oh.
That was in Hotspots. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which ties to this, because he's quite specific about which bodies he'll burn through quickly. I will get into it later. He's really eager to use Joe's body until it gets damaged, and then Moira's body. So there's something to the idea of being in a genetically powerful body. But we'll come back to that. Back to Fariha.
Yeah. So, I mean, but the thing is, one thing I was a little confused by is because is he supposed to be a rape baby? Because that's something that he's kind of mentioned here, because it's I was born out of violence. And, it's just the way. And then Moira says that, you put me in the hospital, but you also left me pregnant. All of that is one big oof size to 10. But the thing is, knowing what we know, that this was planned, how is that possible? And how do you bend that story to fit the current mold? So that's where I was like, what does that mean?
Well, we are absolutely going to get into that. Tyler, it's up to you if you want to dig into that now, or if you kind of want to give your initial reaction pass. But that's one of the biggest things I've been waiting to talk about ever since we read House of X2.
I mean, when I first read it, I actually did not think that it was a rape. I thought it was a domestic violence, he was beating her, which landed her in a hospital. And then, but he didn't know that she was pregnant when he was being abusive to her. So, but on this reread, I sort of got to the same conclusion that it was both domestic violence as well as rape. So, and then that question came up, right? Okay, if she's trying to conceive his baby, so how unwilling is her in this case?
Well, I think that's one of the genius things I think that Hickman did here, because if we read this without Hickman, the debate we would be having maybe would be between, was it sexual violence specifically, or was it just domestic violence and she was already pregnant, which you've both highlighted perfectly. But I think what Hickman does is I think, gives Moira back some agency here in the story by the way that he writes that diary entry, because Moira absolutely meant to be in this relationship and had some amount of control in this relationship. And I think it probably recasts that it's probably domestic violence without being sexual violence because of Moira's plan. At least that was my read that I got now in the wake of House of X and Powers of X. I'm interested to hear what the two of you think. But because the other thing that I got from this is Joe is more than she thought she could control. Moira went into this with 9 lives of knowledge and with all of this, genetics information. And she tried to pick the person that would serve her best genetically. And I think we could get into, does that mean he maybe was a mutant too, given how hot Proteus was to inhabit his body.
Yeah.
But she couldn't control him the way that she thought she would be able to. Why? We don't know. We know that he's a future politician. We know he's in line to be a prime minister. It could be that she just picked a very unsavory character, and all of her various experiences with even worse unsavory characters like Magneto and Apocalypse was not enough to control him. And so I think it's just an interesting tightrope that Hickman has chosen to walk. It's no doubt that he's read every single word in every one of these issues to get there. But I think he's made a very conscious decision to give her an amount of agency back, but she's not lying that he put her in the hospital. So clearly something happened that got outside of her control. I don't know, Fariha, what this is your first read and only read. What was your take on all of that?
I mean, that's what it is, though. It's like, I think at the end of the day, I kind of came to the conclusion. It's like, oh, okay, maybe we're not supposed to read every single word and trying to twist a story that was there before and then a new thing, because it just kind of falls apart in a lot of ways. But the thing is, I mean, then it just kind of becomes like, okay, why Joe? Like, why
Right.
Joe MacTaggert? Like, what about him? Like, because she's saying that, she's choosing them based on genetics and stuff. Wouldn't it make sense to pick another mutant? Or how does she know that this is, like, I mean, if you're trying to get to a specific mutant power, the only way to get there would have probably been to create a mutant in a test tube or something, versus like, trying to go do it naturally. So why Joe? Now that's a question that I guess like maybe in a Moira series we'll get an answer to someday down the line. I don't know.
I have some thoughts, but Tyler, do you have some thoughts?
I mean, it has been shown that two humans can give birth to a mutant. So genetics definitely play a part, and it does not have to be a mutant. You see, the other thing is I don't believe that at this point in time, both Moira and Xavier, Moira X, have met any reality warpers. Maybe in her past life she has. So she knows what, I mean, I guess, which gene or which X gene will have the highest chance of them creating a reality warper. And maybe that's why she chose MacTaggert, because, it's like, okay, this guy fits them all. And I mean, I think that is the extent that I think I can read into it, because there are a lot of things unsaid here, and then of course we can put in a lot of backstories into it, but until it becomes canon, it's just something that we think of from from nothing. So
Well, I think there's a certain Occam's razor simplest explanation path here, which is that she knows that it has to be Joe because of Life 9. She was part of Apocalypse's inner circle. Sinister had the breeding pits and his Chimera program under their direction, although she seems like it was probably hesitant to get Sinister involved. But she was already a brilliant geneticist, probably as or more brilliant than Sinister in many ways. And I have to assume that Moira just took note. Plus, she had all that data plugged into her body at one point. Like, I think Moira, while she doesn't have an encyclopedic knowledge of all 7 billion people on the planet, I'm sure she took note of some of the most useful mutants, knowing that she had one life left, especially when things got really dire at the end. And I'm sure she kind of just took note, like, hey, even though she didn't have this plan formed until the diary entry with Xavier in Life 10, I bet she's got some favorites in mind that she knows produce some interesting results. And I think that's where Joe and both Gabriel Harler and Joe came from. And they're both super ambitious, notable people. Like, even if Moira had not messed with them, they're people who she might have known about in her world, right? Which is, again, Hickman's pure genius in planning. Yeah. Would Joe have probably been the prime minister at some point in one of the prior lives? Maybe, even without being, she definitely was never married to him before, but he might have still gotten to be prime minister. Would Gabriel Harler at some point, isn't she the ambassador from Israel at some point to the United Nations in X-Men?
At some point.
Would she have done that without having ever met Xavier and Magneto? Maybe, although she was, in psychosis after the war, so maybe not. So it's possible that Moira knew already these people. So I think this is an interesting question. We could do a whole hour on this, but I want to kind of move us to some other themes and then get into the issue. So here's the theme. The other big thing that's happening here is Mastermind being at the margins of this story and manipulating Jean. And I think to get from the Moira theme to the Jean theme, I want to talk a little bit about gaslighting and abuse, because I think it connects the two a little bit. There's this thing about gaslighting and abuse where even if you know fully what it is, even if you're a strong, powerful, willful person, you can walk headlong into a situation that is like that. And it can be hard to extricate yourself, right? Some of the people that I've known who've been in abusive relationships, not necessarily physically abusive, just emotionally, are some of the most powerful, intelligent, wise people I know. But once you're in, you're in. And I think that that's a theme in Moira and Joe. Like, was it something that even this 10 Lives Moira couldn't extricate herself from? But it's also something that's happening with Jean and Mastermind. Mastermind's been testing Jean by degrees to kind of see where her edge or her limit is. And we'll get into that with the story in Classic 24. But here in these issues, we see Mastermind like actually changing the reality around Jean. It goes from just normal human gaslighting to superpowered gaslighting, because he's trying to do what? He's trying to test her limits. He's trying to figure out what her switch needs to be flipped. Tyler, what do you think, Mastermind's really trying to do here to Jean to manipulate her to get her to where he wants?
I mean, I have a feeling that he, based on the classic backup story, he knew she had installed in herself circuit breakers so that she doesn't goes over the edge. And here, by switching her into another era, by confusing her, by pairing her with someone who's cruel that she apparently loves, he's trying to break down that circuit breaker. He's trying to remove that circuit breaker, not knowing like the full extent of her power and not knowing what will happen later on. But, so basically his way of controlling her is to make her evil in some ways.
Fariha, this was, I think, your first experience with Jean's 18th century psychic adventures. What did you think about this? What did you think about Mastermind's plan here?
I think it's kind of hard to kind of discuss it without knowing what's coming, without reading what's coming, the Phoenix Saga. Like, maybe that will probably bring, I was thinking that this is all just a prelude to that.
It is, very much.
Yeah, I mean, it is a prelude to all of that. So I didn't necessarily pay as much attention to it. I'm like, oh, okay, Mastermind is doing something. And then, at the back of my head, I'm like, seriously, Mastermind? He can but the thing is, without reading the Phoenix Saga, I don't think I can speak too much about it, But
without having read Phoenix Saga, how foreboding is it for you? Like, what is your this is creepy level on these scenes right now?
I mean, it is a lot of creepy level, but the thing is, I think it also kind of makes sense that she is a little bit more vulnerable because there is now, she thinks that everyone else is dead, right at the beginning. Yeah. And then also Professor X is not there to coach her or, any of that. So I think it kind of makes sense that she's relying on the next person that she found to be that, I don't have to worry about life or any of that. And that person is kind of pushing her again and again, right? So, I mean, it kind of made sense from that point, everything else that was going on, that, it's anyone in that situation would fall for that. And the thing is, the question was that if she had the enough support, and not just Cyclops, who is whatever, or, all the rest of them who are not necessarily equipped with dealing with that kind of thing. But if Professor X was there, maybe things would have been a little different,
And again, I think in both of these plots, we have to look at them with the knowledge that we have from the later retcons. Here, the retcon of Jean coming back in X Factor means that this is actually the Phoenix. And so you almost can explain it. You knew that. You already knew that. Based on the classic X-Men backup. And so, with that full future knowledge, we can almost go back and retcon a little, be like, Phoenix is going through the motions of these intense emotions for the first time. And there's maybe a little bit of naivete at the heart of Phoenix that Jean wouldn't have had. Maybe Jean in Jean's own body with Jean's own psychic powers would not have been affected by Mastermind in the same way as the Phoenix Force inhabiting the body of a woman. And even in the original read, it's Jean plus this cosmic entity. It's not just Jean. And so, she's she's enticed by and blinded by more power. She's almost assuming that if anybody would try to mess with her, she would know. But Mastermind is kind of cloaking himself just enough psychically, and she's not pushing on him hard enough that she, as of yet, has not figured out that he's doing something to her. So she's not like getting the full experience. And that's why, to me, it comes back around to the like actual world version of abuse and gaslighting, because he's just making her feel like a normal person is making her feel this way. And she doesn't realize the extent of what's happening.
So has there ever been a story that is like just Jean as Jean and not Jean plus Phoenix?
And not Teen Jean either. Gosh, hardly ever.
So is that the current status quo? Is it pure Jean?
I mean, I think Morrison got the closest to writing pure Jean of anybody. Like he gave Jean, or they gave Jean some like pure, she's off on her own kind of moments. And I think that's as close as we've ever gotten, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, the current Jean is resurrected, right?
Yeah.
So,
but she's Jean, as far as we know.
I mean, it's not Jean plus Phoenix.
No.
It's not Jean plus this other thing. It's just Jean. Oh, okay.
Just
That's
Jean.
Interesting. Because a lot of people is like, oh, this is not Jean. I'm like, maybe this is Jean. Because
maybe before that.
Yeah, she was Jean without Phoenix from X Factor 1 up until she, spoilers, dies at the end of Morrison's X-Men. Although you've read that. Although at points she has the Phoenix Force. Like she has the Phoenix Force at points in Morrison. So here, now let's kind of use this to kind of steer us into what's happening in the actual issues. So there is like a Jean subplot that's running through these issues, which is that Moira has kind of realized the full extent of Jean's powers. That's where we open on in 125 is Moira is testing Jean. And there's some really interesting Moira dialogue and voiceover and narration here. Moira is second only to Xavier in this kind of mutant research and genetics. She doesn't scare easily. Yeah, I bet. And Jean is the daughter she can never dare have. Moira MacTaggert is afraid, which has layers, because not only within the actual story, she's afraid of what she's wrought with Proteus, but, you know, Moira could probably produce some other very powerful mutants if she wanted to. And, but she now sees what's going on with Jean. Now, if we put our House of X2 knowledge on top of this, Phoenix has happened in at least one other life. We saw the Phoenix 5 in life number 4, but that doesn't mean all of this Jean stuff went down the way that it went down there. And Moira seems genuinely surprised, alarmed, concerned at just how powerful Jean might actually grow to be. And in parallel, we see Xavier in space, like finally getting around to read the after action report of some of the Macron crystal stuff. And Xavier realizes it too. And of course, when you layer all of this Moira stuff we know now on top of it, they're both not only having an oh crap moment to Jean being that powerful, they're maybe also having an oh crap moment of like, this could end the universe and end our whole Life 10 gambit, our whole Moira X plan before it comes to fruition. Tyler, what are your thoughts on the kind of Jean power subplot here?
That was the Xavier rushing back was exactly how I thought, with the Hotspots back story right now. That was exactly how I thought he was thinking. He wasn't rushing back to save Jean. He was rushing back to prevent Jean from destroying this timeline in which they have done so much to ensure mutants supremacy, a couple of years later. So that's what I was thinking of. Like, in Moira's sense, I thought this was the part which sort of break a little bit from Hickman's recon. And so, I didn't really think in terms of like, oh, wait, she met the Phoenix 5 before. So I was kind of surprised that she was that surprised, of the Phoenix power here.
Now, Fariha, you don't have quite as much baggage as we do coming to that. What did you think about Moira's realization of the dawning on her of how much power Jean truly is wielding at this point?
So I kind of looked at it more as like, oh, this is something new than what she has seen before. First 10 life, and whether her the gears were turning in her head. How can I use it for this new life, because we have seen it that in every life there was something new, like, something new she tried, right? And given that this is kind of the last chance, or so destiny tells us, she just ruined everything for her. That she probably thought that, ooh, this is like a new thing that I'm trying. So I'm kind of that's one of the reasons, like, anytime, like, she was she was testing all these new things on her, and then it's like, oh, let's see what you can do, let's twirl a little bit. Like, I thought that's where it came from, that she was trying to see how this can be used for our target, like our plan. That's how I looked at it.
And, Claremont lays it on real thick here with Jean, not only having Moira kind of react to her as a scientist, but Jean does her whole little fashion moment where she twirls around and she telekinetically rearranges the molecules of her costume, which we've seen her do before, but not with every twirl of a pirouette, every one being a new costume. And then she also makes this, or somebody else makes the comment about her, that she's changing her metabolism so she doesn't get as cold without as many clothes on, which is not the same of just telekinetically screening out the cold air. Basically, she's manipulating things down to a molecular level. She's her own reality warper now. And it's really interesting to see that plot overlaid on the Proteus plot, especially with our future knowledge, because Moira's like, oh, wow, like, here I have this reality warper under lock and key, and Jean is at that level too, where she's able to manipulate, reality. Although she still cannot detect Proteus or Moira psychically, and neither can Cerebro. I wonder if that's a trait that Moira and or Joe have passed down to their child.
I think
Moira has that.
Yeah.
Moira cannot be detected.
Yeah.
And at the moment, neither can Proteus.
You're right. In this story, Proteus couldn't too. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just kind of...
But didn't that feel like a plot device? It's like, oh,
it is.
It's like,
but Hickman's going back and sewing up all those plot devices into an actual plot.
That's true. But one thing I'm gonna say though is like that clothes changing. If I'm not saying that it's happening, but if X-Men are to have a gala, that clothes changing would really come in handy to come up with a new style.
Well, that is a Phoenix enhanced power, which we don't have anybody with the Phoenix outside of Jason and Avengers right now. Okay.
Yeah, right now the Avengers are fighting for the Phoenix power.
Yeah, spoilers. It's my fault. I did it. Okay.
Oh, damn. Okay.
So look, the only other thing that really happens in 2025 is finally, after 10 issues, we get this mixed connection moment of the X-Men realizing that the other X-Men are alive. Colleen, Wing, and Misty never gave up the game, but Beast comes to check on the X-Mansion, and he's like, the alarms are off, and then he gets in a fight, and then the X-Men are like, you're alive, and then he's like, well, Jean too, and then Cyclops freaks out and calls Moira, and Cyclops is so wound up, not because of Jean though, but because Polaris is attacked off screen by Proteus on Moira, that Cyclops fires up the team so fast that at the beginning of 126 we find out that he didn't even bring Beast with them. Like Beast was right there, but Cyclops has the ball in the air so fast, that the Beast doesn't even have time to get on the Blackbird.
And then one of them actually said, "Oh, Beast asked us to wait for him." It's like, no, we don't have time. Let's go. let's go.
Yeah, because Beast said he has to go back to the Avengers mansion to inform like Cap or Thor that he needs to leave to Muir Island for the reunion.
It was at that time. It was at that time when there was no telephone, there was no cell phone. So
no.
Well, the mansion was having problems with the phone service being turned off.
And also, like, weirdly, Nightcrawler is just standing above the front door waiting for intruders to come in. He's like, he has nothing to do, so he's just like, oh, I'm going to hide in the shadows here, just waiting for someone to come in.
That's true.
because the alarm has all been disarmed, right?
Right, because they're living in the office or the mansion.
So they're not. I mean, so I don't know. Nightcrawler is just randomly doing like sneaky stuff. Like, oh, let's see if I can hide in the shadow above the front door.
So I mean, to that point though, it's like I didn't quite understand that who knows what and everything, because the thing is like Lorna and then it's like, oh hey Cyclops, how are you? You're alive. Like, I mean, did it feel like it was just kind of like, oh, great. Like, I don't know. There was like not enough emotion on this.
Well, and also you would think that Cyclops, Havok was never presumed dead. So you would think even if Cyclops thinks Jean is dead, that he would want to call his brother and be like, I'm not dead. So there's there's comic book contrivances happening in here.
No, I mean, wait. Lorna did express surprise though.
She does.
No, she did. She does. But that's my question. What Peter was saying, that why don't they know that they're alive? Because he didn't come back and tell his brother that, hey, I'm okay.
And they've been back for a while now because they were like training before the arcade thing happened. It's not like they're like fresh off the plane from their whole like Japan Alpha Flight everything anymore.
Yeah, I mean, is really the question is really between arcade and the start of this issue, right? Because I think the start of arcade issue was when Scott went to turn on the telephone. So presumably after they turn on, he would try to contact someone, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe he's only procrastinating by like a day.
Yeah. So they got caught by arcade.
Oh, okay. And then he got like all tied up with the danger room, and then forgot to call.
And then Colleen Wing gave him the key, so he forgot to.
Then he forgot everything.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes so much sense. And this was before text messaging people, so that makes sense. I mean, that I don't remember that world, but.
Or maybe Scott did call Havok, but he called Alex in Alaska. And no one picks up the phone because they were supposed to be studying rocks in Alaska.
Oh, yeah, good point. Claremont keeps track of these things. I'm sure he had a plan.
Okay.
There's one other
Tyler
thing.
to the rescue. Okay.
Yeah, there's one other thing in 125 which is worth mentioning, which is the other subplot, which is that Magneto is back on Asteroid M, kind of licking his wounds. And I've, a number of very attractive panels, but there's nothing really comes of it. Claremont's just reminding us that Magneto's still in play somewhere, and that won't really come into fruition for quite some time. Yeah. So now we move into 126.
Show up.
Yeah. In 126, Cyclops has gotten the team across the ocean in an hour, and they come in hard on Muir Island. He's in a blind panic because Jean's there. They're at risk. Lorna yelled on the phone. He's definitely merging some of his concerns with some of his other concerns here in terms, he really is, I think, quite anxious to see Jean, but he's like, we've got to save Lorna. Okay, Scott. And so, Colossus plummets to the island. Everybody deploys. There's some mistaken identity stuff. And eventually everybody gets back on the same page and kind of gives each other all of the exposition that they need, which is that Proteus is loose and that he stole a spare Madrox and rode that body out of Dodge and onto the Scottish mainland. There's poor Angus McWhorter, here he lies. He was one of the most plot significant humans in X-Men history. He was racist about renting them a boat, and then he was Proteus's means of escape, and we'll never forget him. So I don't know how much there is to talk about here, other than Cyclops and Jean reunited at last. What did you think about that, Fariha?
These two should not be together.
You can tell by their hi, it's great to see you.
I don't know. That's what I'm telling you. This is why I just don't feel comfortable anytime two of them are it's like something's it's like brothers and sisters. I don't know. There's something weird about them. And the thing is, Cyclops, man, he's been Colin gave him a key and everything, and his first thing was Jason. That was the first thing he tells Jean. Who's Jason? It's no one of your concern.
Yeah.
Mr. Colin, no one of your concern. It was just, that's what I'm telling you. It's just two of them. That's his first word to her.
Yeah.
He's been thinking everything else he's been thinking. His first word to her is Jason. These two should not be together.
Well, that's because Jean just got the image of Jason and called out to Jason.
Yeah, I know that. But the thing is, his first first words to her after thinking that she's dead should not be that, is what I'm saying. This kind of shows that they're not meant for each other.
No, but then, Byrne drew that reunion scene where Jean was looking at Scott and Wolverine was looking at Jean. And I thought it was really, really really, really subtle, and like even Claremont didn't do anything in his caption. He didn't write anything in the caption.
Right, he's like starting to really, really trust Byrne. There's no like Wolverine eyed her longingly. Like the art just sells it.
The art just sells it. And,
yeah, but the thing is, like later in the issue episode, later in the issue, Wolverine's like, yeah, I love her. Like, don't you hit her? It's like, what happened to Mariko? Like, I'm like, I didn't forget about Mariko. I know it's been 2 weeks I read those, like, or a month since I read those issues, but I didn't forget about Mariko.
Yeah, but
excuse me.
But Logan is a man like who can love multiple women at the same time.
Oh, okay. His heart is too big. Okay, I gotcha. You know,
something.
You know what? Gotcha.
Yeah.
So
his body might be too short. Heart is really big. His 90% is heart. His body. Like,
I mean, the strange thing here is that Byrne is not credited as the co-plotter for 125 and 126. They actually credit him separately. So Claremont as a writer and Byrne as the artist. So I was wondering, like, that's a little bit weird because I thought they have been collaborating.
I almost wonder if it's that Claremont just knew he had to get so much plot material in 125 and 126, but then because of all the reality warping stuff, that like 127 and 128 were more Marvel method, where he was like, I don't know, Byrne, Nightcrawler tries to stop him, and Byrne just draws these like ridiculous pages, and we'll get to I have a lot to say about the reality warping art, but we'll get there in a moment. At the risk of reading into every Moira MacTaggert line, which I just can't help doing as I'm rereading right now, there are a few that made my ears perk up. One is to say to Cyclops, "You've no idea how glad I am to see you both alive," which is like not only that they came to rescue her, but like, you know, she knows how integral these X-Men are to their plan. So like the idea that there was a team wipe, and knowing that because of Deadly Genesis, her backup team also wiped. Like she's probably in there being like, God damn it, I gotta go collect Rain and we gotta activate the new mutants, right? Like she's already to her like third plan. So she's like, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to rely on backups. But then the other thing that like really, really jumped out, and you know that Hickman read this panel as he was making all of his sinister notes here, is that she's on a road trip with Cyclops loading her gun, and she says that Proteus was a beautiful baby. She hated his father, but loved him and still do. And when his mutant power emerged, changing him, she tried to find a cure. We all know that is not true, because if she tried to find a cure, Destiny and Mystique would be on her like green on grass.
No, that was a bold-faced lie.
She just straight up lied. I tried to find a cure.
Like, no, you didn't. You were a mutant ally. You would never try to cure a mutant, mutancy. Like, that's not your thing. So it's like, why are you lying? It was like, girl, that's a lie. But the thing is, like, every time she has a gun, I'm like, life 7. Or no, life 6? No, life 7. Whichever one. Life 7.
She's real good with the gun in here. I mean, she's doing like sniper shots. She's like firing. She's really, really. Hickman made it all make sense. It was Hickman all along.
Well, it is also this issue that we have the first mention of Wolverine's adamantium skeleton.
I thought that was the first time.
Yes.
Yeah. No, before that, it was hinted at that his bones are sort of like unbreakable or something like that.
And that the claws snapped, but they never just come out and say it.
Yeah, this one just comes out and say that.
Yeah, and I also noticed that, because at first she was like, oh, because I thought that they're just gonna mention his claws, but then he's like, no, it's like all of me is like adamantium. I'm getting there.
So the other thing that struck me about, and you kind of hinted at it in that Moira statement, is the way that Moira used to work as a character is like she had this baby who was a mutant. She was all by herself, but she was also a Nobel Prize winner. And so she's like, I'm going to cure this. And in not being able to cure it, she kind of becomes an ally. And she knew Professor X at some point. And it actually kind of doesn't make a ton of sense if you line it all up. Because really, this person who met Professor X and then randomly had a mutant baby, it kind of just like doesn't all line up. Now, of course, we know that she she's just telling a version of events that mirrors her own journey from life 1 to life 3 of finding out she was a mutant and trying to find a cure to Scott because it's convenient, and it's a convenient lie because there was never a cure, and she maybe was a little bit alarmed by how hard Proteus was to control, but she also might just had him in that room like somebody, a kid like keeping a baby bird in a shoebox under their bed just to like hide it from everybody else. Like, I don't know if we have to fully buy that he was in the room just because he was hard to control. He was in the room because it wasn't time to use him yet.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a little upsetting as well. Like, it's like, oh, you're just hiding your child, like hiding this person away until he's useful to you.
Yeah.
And not just hiding him away, like hiding him and keeping him alive, right? Because she created this cell with like the energy that feeds him, right? So yeah.
Well, also there's a discrepancy in the timeline. I think we're meant to read Proteus here as being anywhere from 16 to 19. I kind of always thought, or even older. Yeah. But if you go by the math in the timeline in House of X2 that continues through all of Hoxpox, Proteus is like 10 to 12 years old here.
It's like young.
What?
Like really young.
But it's kind of like, and so you have to, but he also says that every time he gets into somebody else's body, he absorbs that person's memories and personality almost in like a reverse rogue kind of way. So you have to wonder if his like sheer seething hatred here develops by being in McWhorter's body and then the cop's body and whatever. Like, we have no way to know how evil or old original Proteus is, because we don't really get to experience him before he takes over McWhorter's body.
Yeah, I blame.
Well, no,
blame Mac Widow.
Well, hold on. But hold on. It has to be more than 20 though, because he says, like, she says that it has been 20 years she hasn't seen Joe. So
yeah, but that's like sliding time still. Like, I mean, you're right. You are 100% right. It can't be 20 years anymore.
Oh, okay.
Because of the
time straight. Oh, okay, I gotcha. But the thing is, like, it's just like, I'm like, if he's 10, then that's like, oh, poor baby. Like, he just got his power then, and then he got shoved into a vault. It's like, stay there. Oh, that's not the Mother of the Year award.
No,
but we know that.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the end of the issue now. It's going to be tempting to talk about Classic X-Men 32, but I really want to save it to the end. So at the end of the issue, Wolverine and Nightcrawler manage to corner Proteus, and we get that whole revelation about Wolverine's adamantium body. And so Proteus really begins with the serious reality warping, which we haven't really fully seen yet up until this point. At this point, he's just been this body snatcher. And Wolverine, even though he's relatively immune, is just absolutely shaken to his core by this bendy, twisty, rubbery journey that Proteus takes him on. And Proteus realizes that he can't get into Wolverine. Nightcrawler's of no use because he sticks out like a sore thumb. So Proteus gets fixated on Storm. Thoughts on this sequence, Tyler?
No, I thought it was kind of brilliant because he's like, oh yeah, Nightcrawler is the obvious easy target here for me to get into, and then he's like, but no, I can't hide, looking like him. So let's go to Storm, and so as to delay. I mean, it's kind of like delaying the action so that the rest of the X-Men could potentially catch up. But I mean, and then of course, the next issue we get quite a few other things happening, which for me I think was the part that I actually remembered like very distinctively when even now, like even before I reread this, I remember that particular sequence of scenes that I loved. So
Freya, you had something right as we began talking about this. What did you have to say about this encounter?
Well, one thing is like Proteus called Storm Blackbird.
Yeah.
that was weird.
Really sensitive guy.
Yeah. Real, like weird. And then the other thing was that this was, I don't know, I mean, in modern, if you're looking at it from the modern point of view, it's like, oh, Proteus surely will not hurt a cop. Like, it's like, okay, why? like why is that so different? But yeah, that just kind of two things that stuck out. But the thing is that I really liked seeing all the reality twerping things, and I think this is where we will have more to say in issue, like when we go to 32. But there was like a lot of that.
Spoilers.
I know, we will say that at that time.
Yeah.
But then we also see that, when Storm was pushing him, there was actually nothing there. Like, it just like, it was just his silhouette. So that's kind of like cool. Like he actually doesn't have anything. It just the being. Yeah. Like,
and
so
also I think
that was pretty.
I mean, there's also this whole theme about, well, not theme, like whole characteristics about Storm not willing to take a life, because I think
she won't even kill bees.
Yeah, I know.
Totally fabricated bees.
Yeah.
Bees that were like reality warped from like crumbling bricks. And she's like, oh, they are bees. I can't kill them. So I'm just going to create a wind to sweep them away. Yeah. So I mean, so she's still being what do you call the Gia, the Earth Goddess type of mole here right now. Like I think Claremont is still using her in that, using that characteristics for her right at this point in time. So
I agree. So I think before we get into 127 and 128, which so much go together that it's going to be hard to kind of tear one away from the other, let's talk about the art for a moment. So Marvel in the Silver Age has done a lot of very off-the-wall art for different reasons. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in Doctor Strange because he's going through dimensions, sometimes in S.H.I.E.L.D. just from like a pure graphic design standpoint. But I think Byrne brings a really different surrealist type of art to this, because it's very, to me, influenced by Salvador Dali and also influenced by like pop art. Like it's very kind of like almost parts of it, the boldness of the color and the way he reduces things to just shapes has like a certain kind of Andy Warhol quality to it. And I just feel like, Byrne's at this point a little younger than some of the guys that are drawing those other things. And I just think Byrne is bringing like a different version of psychedelic to this than we've seen in some of the other Marvel books that are generally credited as psychedelic. This is like a much bolder, more plasticky, more melted candle wax version of psychedelic than I think had been in many Marvel comics to this point. And it's honestly really impressive. Like I think we forget, because he's so good at figure work, that he's a good cartoonist. But like some of this cartooning of reality going wibbly wobbly is really, really cool. I don't know. What did you think about just the nature of his bent reality illustration across these issues?
I mean, I like the fact that he immediately changes the panel layout to not square. Like like none of the panels were like really square, and he keeps changing them. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, even when I first read it, I was like, okay, this is weird, but I didn't think too much, because I wasn't a I mean, I don't think of myself as someone who knows how to appreciate art when I first read comics. So my art knowledge, right, in terms of like pop art or even classical art, is not very deep. So I don't have like I don't have a great appreciation of like great artists of the past, because because I don't know.
I'm mostly faking it, as I do on the fashion as well.
Yeah. So, but I mean, there are some like certain things like certain things after I moved to New York, I begin to recognize almost immediately. But when I was first reading these issues, it really doesn't register too much to me. I was like, oh, this is really weird. They are becoming bubbles. They're becoming cartoony. They're becoming like stretchy, and that was the extent of it. And I think there was one point where the is it this issue or another issue where like the people just like crumbles into like different bubbles and things like that. So I thought that was like, I mean, in that sense, it was interesting, but I did not detect any influence like you did.
Fariha, what about you? Anything to say about Byrne's art here and the reality bending?
So because I knew that his power is reality warping, this is what I was looking forward to, and to see that how he how it's kind of shown without like Claremont just narrating in the background that, oh my God, he's bending them into bubbles. Like, get it. But the thing is like, so it wasn't that. And I was happy to see that. Like, it was different kinds. And then like what, as Tyler said, that the panel changed and then they were just becoming whoopy, like, and all the things that you were saying, that different influences and everything. So from that point of view, and then we see later in like issue 126 and 127, like all the other different things that he does. So I think from that point of view, it was like A+ in terms of capturing the essence of reality bending.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think at this point, Proteus is still learning his powers. So he's
never really been out in the open doing this before, theoretically.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So I think he's just realizing how powerful he is. And then, of course, quickly realizing that the more he uses powers, the more he's burning up his host. So, so I thought that was pretty interesting, kind of like putting him into that situation where he's like, okay, I need to find a new host immediately because I'm burning this up. So that puts a circuit breaker on him before he utterly destroyed the X-Men before they could do anything. So
who is more powerful, him or Jamie?
Jamie, I think.
Just because of skill level, or just because of?
I think so.
I think the nature of their powers is a little bit different. I feel like you and I talked about this on my channel before when we were talking about who's the most powerful mutant. I was like, well, Jamie or Proteus, probably. Yeah. Because Proteus can kind of melt reality to do the things that he wants it to do, but it's kind of dependent on his vision, where I think with Jamie a lot of the times it's made out like he's pulling the strings of reality. It's almost like he's playing a harp. And so over time, he's figured out what strings to do what. Sometimes when Jamie is really desperate and under fire, he just pulls a random string and somebody turns into a banana or something. And he didn't intend to make them a banana, but he can really mess things up. But over time, he's become a wonderful harpist of reality, and he can get melodic effects out of reality because he knows what strings to pull. Whereas Proteus, I could be totally wrong. This is something Zach could come on and tell me I'm totally wrong. We'll call him up after this and ask him. But I've always seen Proteus as it being more like pure imagination. Like, what does Proteus want to do? He doesn't really have to have a learning curve that we've seen. Really, there's only 2 Proteus stories ever, as far as I can think of. It's this one and Charles Soule's Astonishing X-Men. Does he ever come back one other time in the middle, Tyler, or is that it?
I mean...
Oh, serious? Is this it? This is all the Proteus we're gonna get?
He's dead.
He's dead. He's been destroyed.
Dead. That's what I want to say.
These are the only 2 that I remember. So I don't actually remember anything else. Actually.
All right, I'm checking.
Because the thing is with him being there, and this is so where does Mastermind fall in place? He's nowhere even on their scale. What does he? He's no.
Mastermind is like that.
So Proteus is one of, theoretically, the many spoilers. We're talking about stuff from 2010. All right, batten down the hatches. Proteus is theoretically one of the many mutants who are resurrected in X Necrotia, I think, because he does briefly come back in a little bit of X-Men Legacy in Carrie's run, and they do have to briefly deal with him on Muir Island, but it's while he's a living dead person, and they dispose of him ultimately. And then his consciousness is around, and he gets brought back during that Charles Soule 12 issues Astonishing run, which really kind of sets up some of the Hickman stuff, even though you don't have to read it all to appreciate Hickman. It kind of has some of the thematic stuff that Hickman picks up. So, go ahead, Tyler.
So in Hickman's House of X 1, Jamie Braddock's reality manipulation is on the quantum level, whereas Proteus' reality manipulation is in the psionics level. Or psychic level. So it's
which makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure it does.
Well, no, because we see him as this body hoppy. He's a consciousness. He's affecting people's minds, their perceptions. He can also bud in reality, but it's on a mental level. Yeah. Whereas Jamie is in your atoms, rearranging your stuff.
All right.
Okay. So Jamie's actually changing it when Proteus is changing your perception of it.
No, I think he's not just changing perception, but he has the ability to make people also believe the thing. I guess. I mean, again, there's only 3 Proteus stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they
I'm not even going to ask where Legion falls into all of this.
Well, they are both I mean, they are definitely Omega and Legion too. But Legion is not a reality warper in Hickman's definition. He is a power manifestation. So in one of his power manifestation is reality warping.
But he's an Omega level power manifester.
Yeah. So he can manifest a lot of powers, different powers.
He's insane.
Yeah.
No matter how you look at him, there's no controlling him. Moira's like, if he's the only one that Professor X came back and was like, hey, look at you, look at this. Our plan works. Like, nope, go back. Procreate again. This is not it.
I know. But there's like 2 other reality warper, right? One is MacTaggert, which is Mr. M, and here he says it's matter manipulation. And then of course we have the Recon Franklin Richards, which is a universal reality warper.
We're not going to spoil anything recent with Franklin Richards. Okay. So look, 127 and 128, a lot of it is filling in the details of Moira's relationship with Joe, which we talked about at the top here. We realize that Proteus is kind of making a beeline for Joe MacTaggert. He wants this revenge on his father figure who he's never met. And Moira figures this out pretty quickly and is on the chase, right? In the middle of this comes a scene that I find so hilarious. It's just such a quintessential Claremont X-Men scene, which is that Wolverine's rattled. The team just got their butts kicked by Proteus, even though we saw them in a pretty decent danger room situation at the top of this in 125, where they kind of take initiative and try to get around Scott. And so Scott just decides that he's going to spring some training on them in the middle of the field by just straight up attacking them to see what they'll do. Because that's good management, right? And it just leads to this moment of Scott just totally beating them down, which is kind of neat in a way, because it kind of gives us a moment of how competent Scott is, which quite frankly, we have not gotten a whole lot of, I don't think, in the Claremont run so far.
He just got sucker punched by Moira.
Yes.
Well, I mean, Moira just takes him out, right? Which again, Hickman's reading this, and as he's making his notes, he's going, how is it that Moira could take Scott out if Scott then takes out the whole team? How does that transitive profit work? Life 7.
So, I mean, no, but the thing is, I will say though, because the thing is, Wolverine over here says, this is one issue. I'm somehow agreeing with Wolverine. And I'm appreciating Cyclops. I'm like, what is happening to me? Because I was also thinking, I'm like, oh, look at him actually trying to get the team back in their feet, because they are like, there's Proteus is on the loose, and he's like, Wolverine's there shaking like this. I don't want to talk about it. And then, so he needed to kind of get into action, and he did. And then Wolverine also said that I ain't thought much of you in the past, like as a team leader or as a man. I'm like, yeah, me neither. And I'm thinking about it now. So the thing is, from that point of view, it was really good. And I'm like, oh, is this why he is the captain now? Commander?
No, but
he is.
That's this sequence of pages is the scene that stuck with me when I first read it. So because I thought it was wonderful, and it's also the first time I think Wolverine acknowledged Cyclops as the leader, and probably why they are in the whatever they're happening on the summer house right now. But but like in my memory, this is the first time where Cyclops earned Wolverine's respect.
I think that's a fair read of it. I do.
Which I thought was important, because
they don't love each other after this, but Wolverine will work with Cyclops after this.
Yeah.
They actually will create synergy with each other in a way that they hadn't previously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that's true though, because previously, even though he was listening to Cyclops, and I think that was just mostly his military, sensibility kicking in, that, hey, I should listen to my commander, but it wasn't out of respect. I think this is the first time where it's like there's a respect. But then also Cyclops says, and neither does Moira. She's not a normal human, not a mutant. I'm like, no.
Little do you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
it was like narrators, like, she was not.
So meanwhile, Proteus makes it all the way to his father, takes over his body, and now Moira gets there, having ditched Cyclops, and Proteus is already pretty quickly burning through Joe, but it's okay for now until Wolverine totally guts his body. But he's menacing Moira because, now he's got his own personal hatred for her, plus Joe's hatred for her. So he's got bonus double exponential hate. And Moira gives this, she's cornered. And you have to think that a cornered Moira is probably a really dangerous thing at this point. And she gives this little monologue, death after endless death without thought or care or mercy, till there's no one left alive on Earth save you. Is that what the future holds? And she's kind of like, yeah, I mean, she sees that, and that's life sex, right? She's literally narrating to him that you can be whatever powerful mutant you freaking want to be, and it's all going to fail because I've tried every which version of it, and you're always going to be alone at the end, and then you're going to die, which is so much, again, Hickman, genius. You're hearing it from my mouth. I might not like his dialogue, but his planning is impeccable. Genius. Agreed. So we end this issue with Moira is kind of captured by Proteus, and the X-Men come to engage, and Moira briefly offers to sacrifice herself, which is you have to wonder now, was that a play, or was she well, better for me to get sacrificed than him to inhabit me, because it is game over if Proteus gets into Moira's body and realizes all of the knowledge that Moira has, because he, again, is like a reverse rogue. Once he gets into your body, he knows all your stuff. That would be a fate worse than death for all of reality. So Moira's if it comes down to it, shoot me.
That's what I read. I mean, it was mostly, whether she was actually meaning it, or whether it was mostly just let's just see how far I can push this before I can get out of here. Right. But I do want to mention the one thing is how quickly, she had her hands in her pocket, and then he's oh, Moira, the Joe is there, and then she just whips out the pistol like that. I thought that was it was and then there's also actually lines drawn to show that she just went a whoosh, and I'm love that. Yeah. That was really good.
Well, no, but also Jean, right? Jean telepathically carrying 5 X-Men.
Oh yes, that was something. I really wish they just didn't kept on mentioning it, or Scott just didn't keep on thinking about it. But as she was carrying all 5, Alex was holding on to dear Lorna like this. Yeah. On the side. I'm oh, he's so pathetic. Even that.
Well, he's so pure. He just wants to be with Lorna. He doesn't care
all the time. He needs to be protected.
The thing with Jean is that not only is she carrying them telepathically, 5 of them, she's making them fly like Superman.
Right, they're not just in a clump.
Yeah, they're ooh.
If you had to carry a bunch of random mutants around with you telepathically, wouldn't you kind of just mush them up into a ball?
Yeah.
There's more efficient ways to do that.
Because you look at Scott, it's oh, he's flying.
Do it again, Tyler.
But again, it's all these little subtle things that Claremont is doing to show us that she's more powerful. And here's a note, which we've kind of offhandedly mentioned. These 4 issues have relatively little captioning from Claremont, other than when he's doing recap and flashback. He is not describing the art a whole lot. He's not even really describing Jean's power as much as he has before. Mm-hmm. So especially with 127 and 128 probably being Marvel methods, since Byrne gets the co-write or the co-plot, he's kind of just letting the art do the lifting. And we're really getting a sense at this point that Jean, I mean, Fariha, are you feeling it? This Jean is not the Jean that we knew even in Magneto's lair underneath the volcano.
I'm feeling the Jean.
You're feeling the Jean. So look, we roll into the final issue here, and there's really only 2 big plot points for me, although I'm open to anything you all want to talk about. It's the fight against Proteus and Reality. The 2 things that always really stick out to me about this issue is A, this is really good teamwork from the team. It's like the Magneto fight where Nightcrawler realizes to teleport away the helmet. The one that always sticks out to me is Cyclops realizes he can catch Wolverine by shooting him with his optic beams, which I just think is so great. But the whole team really is working. You feel all this training has finally paid off, and they're reunited and they're powerful. And also Colossus the Killer right? Which kind of completes this little mini arc that we've had for Colossus that starts out, that's really developed in a lot of the classic issues, right? Like him as the artist, the ballerina leaves him because he's a mutant. He shags his way through the Savage Land. He goes back to Mother Russia briefly, but then comes back. Then after the whole arcade, the proletariat thing, like there's almost this whole journey that he's been on where he realizes he really is part of this team. This is his first family. And if he has to do something that's against his own morals, his own beliefs, but it's to save his family, he will do that thing. So anything along those lines or other lines that you want to pull out here, Fariha, or anything else?
No, I really love the fighting because, and I think now I'm just suddenly realizing why it took me about 6 minutes per issue to read these, because you're right, there was no caption.
Yeah.
Like everything that was needed, that was just presented. Now I'm actually realizing that, and I truly enjoyed it. And I understood what was going on, like, so I'm like, please, Grandpa, you don't need to explain everything to me. But I also love that, everyone's using their power as much as they can. I really love it when superheroes are actually using their power to fight rather than like, oh, I don't know, or like, just running around like a headless chicken. The one that Cyclops catching Wolverine like that and Wolverine going, ow, 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 ow. That was the best thing that ever happened. I really like, I like that Colossus didn't go like, oh, I can't kill. It's like, nah, you're going down.
You're gonna be fine.
You were too much. Like you're going down. And then the one that I do want to mention though, there's like one scene where Jean's like, there's like a skeleton.
Oh, I love that panel.
Okay, so the thing is, does the skeleton has boobs? Because I feel like the skeleton has a boob. Look at it.
No, that's her body. The outline of her body is around the skeleton. It's just the rib cage. I mean, it's like a little rotated, maybe.
Yeah.
So that
that's
the rib cage. The rib cage coming up.
Okay. That's good. That's good.
I see what you. I think I see what you mean. No, Fariha, there are no breastbone. I mean, the breastbone is not a literal breastbone.
I know. I'm a lady. I know. I know that. Way to mansplain my own body to me. Sure, if Byrne knew that. That's why I wanted to ask that question. I'm like, is that supposed to be bone, like boob bone or like, breastbone or something, like, because that doesn't happen.
I mean, now I'm just like living for the hilarity of one of these like 90s artists who's like never studied anatomy, and the writer is like, draw them in X-ray. The power's like lighting up their skeleton. And the artist, without even thinking about it, like puts this little like boob bone on the skeleton.
Because they never went second base with any ladies. That's why they didn't know. Because here's what I'm telling you though. Because when I say that, I actually checked myself. I'm like, no, the bones are underneath. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you for indulging me and clarifying the situation.
I mean, I just like the panel because it's pink. We've established that anytime there's bright pink, I'm like,
no.
Shiny.
No, to be honest, it's a great panel though, because I think we don't actually see that a lot. Like, if someone getting zapped, you don't actually see that. Like, you see that in movies, but not necessarily in comics. So from that point of view, it was perfect. But then I'm like, whoa, hold up. It's supposed to be boob bone. That's where I got.
And I also think it was like a nice thematic moment of like this all-powerful goddess Jean. Like she's still a skeleton inside of a body, Mm-hmm. She's not this swirling morass of cosmic energy. There's still a person in there and who still has vulnerabilities as a person. And that's absolutely going to be a theme in the next 10 issues. Tyler, what did you take away from 128?
I actually do not have a lot of notes here because I was just reading through and enjoying it.
Yeah.
And there's one thing which I thought was a little bit inconsistent was Cyclops asking Jean to scan for Proteus when she had already told him that I couldn't detect him. So that was the only part which I thought was, maybe Claremont forgot. And he started writing and then putting in more words here. And then the other thing was like Colossus' attempt at humor. He's like, I do not rust.
I know, he just killed this person. He's probably broken up inside, but Moira's crying because they ruined her whole friggin' plan. And he's like, don't worry, I don't rust. And a wonderful little Wizard of Oz callback, right? Like with the Tin Man. Just a really cute moment.
But what about that? Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was talking about the art. Well, like, what about when Colossus like punch into Proteus and you have that white lines, radiant lines? Oh, that was so beautiful.
It's like, I wonder if they now talk about it over at the lagoon. Like, remember that time you like destroyed me? Oh no, sorry, he's not there anymore. He's in Savage Land somewhere. The what I was gonna say though, it's really nice that in the behind the scene everyone's like walking away, but it's Moira and Sean Cassidy. They're just And then Sean, there was one time we didn't mention before. Sean is like, husband. What is the what? Like,
Jason, husband.
Exactly. But no, to be honest, Sean is justified at that. It's like, husband. Because I think he was under the impression. Yeah, I think he was under the impression that she was a widower at this point. So, that's what is justified. It's like, I would ask, like, what? So
I just, I'm really starting to appreciate that, like, if you read it with all the Hickman stuff in mind, Moira's not immune to human emotions. She's this badass through life 10, but like I do genuinely believe that she likes Banshee, and I don't think she clearly had met him at least once in lives 4 through 9, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I really believe there's some big ulterior motive to her dating Banshee. I just think that she's still a human being. I honestly do.
You cannot have an ulterior motive when you're dating Banshee. Like, look at him. Bless him. Like, it's like he's just too pure. He needs
she needed a red shirt on Krakoa, so.
So I mean, that's to me, that's one of the reasons I was kind of, like, I always kind of, even though he's like a motor mouth, but I'm like, maybe you should tell him that you're around. I don't know.
I think, I like Tyler's read. He's just somebody she can easily sacrifice if anybody comes for her, right? She's like, oh, take the shot, Banshee, just like in the lake where she's like, no, don't drown Banshee. Okay, we're moving on now to the 3 classic X-Men issues. Mm-hmm. The first one is Classic X-Men 24, which happened actually before now, but because it is so much of the mastermind manipulating Jean, even though I love to read things chronologically, some things just aren't fun to read chronologically. And I think it reads better after Mastermind's reveal of the manipulation of Jean here to see what he's done already. So Jean is on her worldwide Eat, Pray, Love vacation. He goes to, I think, the Greece Islands is where we are here. And he engineers her losing her things, her passport, so that she'll have to rely on him exclusively. And even though he's doing some masterminding here in terms of like getting the kids to steal her stuff and like manipulating clearly what he looks like, because he's not this handsome, he's not really directly manipulating Jean in this story. I get the feeling that this is him seeing how far he can push her just with psychology. That's my read on it anyway. And at points, Jean spurns him repeatedly. She doesn't even want to talk to him at the beginning. She doesn't want to like accept his help. He kisses her one time and she's like, get off me. And at the end, he really thinks he's wound her up as this post-human phoenix who's going to like take over the world. And she's like, no, that's not what I'm about. So I kind of I think of this story as Jean's 3 rejections of Mastermind, where he realizes he's going to have to escalate to building this whole different reality around her, because the thing that he would do to normal people, which I'm sure he's done many times over, just don't work. Jean's a little bit too canny for that. So, Free, what were your thoughts on Mastermind, the utter creep, one of the worst creeps in the history of X-Men in this backup story?
So it kind of reads like every romantic comedy that's out there, where it's like, oh, you met someone, but he's not who he is. But at the end, we're in love anyway. So it kind of has that story point. But he kept on talking about Black Queen. So what's that about? Like, and that's one of the reasons I wasn't sure that if he's trying to bring about something in her the same way, like, there's like this same stories that plays out again and again, like, oh, you are the chosen one and you have to be that. And I think it felt like, oh, he's just trying to push her into being that. So, like, once again, without reading the Phoenix Saga, it was just like, oh, okay, some setup, something's going on. What is this?
I mean, that's exactly the I think the takeaway you should get from this story.
Okay.
Like he's trying to push her into a role, and that role is, the Black Queen. But what it is, you don't really have to know right now, but you would realize what it is like very, very soon. So
Okay.
Now-
I'm looking forward to it.
We have 2 more classic X-Men stories, but because Tyler and Freya had promised modern day spoilers when we talk about number 32, we're going to talk about number 33 first, and then we'll give you your ample warning so you could just turn off the program if you don't want to be spoiled on really new stuff, okay?
Yeah.
So Classic X-Men 33, these are both by Ann Nocenti, and they are both deeply weird, which I'm starting to learn is a theme with Ann Nocenti writing X-Men stories.
Yes.
Exactly.
So this story, Havok is hallucinating as they're just driving around, like on their way, doing the search for Proteus that's happening in the middle of these 4 issues. And Havok is just full on hallucinating that he's like merging with Lorna, that they're one, that he's losing her, that he's going crazy, except for it is not reality warping. Havok is just having some mental well-being problems here. And really struggling with this idea of being an X-Men and being called to duty, which he really truly does not want. But at the same time, he seems like kind of scared of this oneness, this life with Moira. A lot of this imagery could be seen as like a metaphor for their eventual marriage and togetherness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like everything scares him. He's just scared by all of it. And he's like full on disassociating as a result. Freya, I mean, I just love your reactions to Havok because it's all so new and so pure for you.
Yeah.
What did you think about Havok here?
I mean, knowing what we know about him, and then the fact that he always has this, like, never stable, always kind of like living in the shadow, a huge shadow of his brother, both younger and the older one. Like, I wasn't sure that it was because he was affected by Proteus, because he was maybe in Proteus's blast, in one of the blasts, and he's like, that's kind of bringing up a lot of things. I wasn't sure, but the whole thing was like, get it together. Like, I just wanted to say, get a grip of reality. Like, just get it together. I think Lorna said the same thing, and I kind of agree. I'm like, you're dating Magneto's daughter. You need to be better than this, guy. Like, that's all I could think about. And I also understand that, that he's scared. And I think that that's something that's worthwhile exploring for at least one X-Men or one mutant who is like, hey, I just kind of got into this, But I feel like it either it needed to be more or not at all, because this ain't it. Because it just ends up making him look like a weirdo.
Yeah, I almost feel like it would have been better if Proteus was involved a little bit to trigger it. Even if he just zaps them once and then like moves on to the rest of the battle, I feel like it would have given it more of an impetus. But Tyler, what did you think?
No, I was thinking like, I mean, the first thing when I read through the whole thing was like, again, when I read through it again, I was like, what the... like, this is a really weird way to realize you love someone. And then... And also a weird way to realize that, the X-Men could meant the end of the two of you somehow. And the thing also is that what I thought was maybe kind of refreshing is that it's not a girl, it's not a female character thinking about that.
Yes.
So there's a gender swap here where, Ann Nocenti basically, make Havok the one who is like so insecure and so afraid of the future of being like a superhero, and also the one that was like so deeply in love with Lorna that that he couldn't see himself being an X-Men and dying because of an X-Men, or because he's of what he sees the X-Men does. So that was what I thought was kind of refreshing, but yeah, it's weird.
I'm finally getting to Tyler. Tyler's not beginning to realize this whole genre bending things.
Yeah.
Now we come to Classic X-Men 32. Just a reminder, Tyler and Freya are going to spoil really recent, like just barely on Marvel Unlimited comics. So if you're not really close to present on X-Men, now you could turn off the program, although we will have a little outro where we talk about what to read next, but you'll be fine. So I'll just recap it generally, and then I open the floor. So Classic X-Men 32, the backup, also by Nascenti, occurs in the middle of Kurt and Logan's confrontation with Proteus at the end of 126. And it really shows why Wolverine was so rattled. It just gives us a lot more material of what Proteus is putting Wolverine through. And one of the really big themes here is that Logan's self-abuse, which is a really interesting beat that Claremont didn't really have his arms around at that point. You know, Logan smokes, he drinks, he just throws himself into battle after battle because he knows his body can take it. But this is like a form of self-harm. It is self-harm. And Logan just knows that he's going to recover from whatever harm he does to himself, which means he can harm himself all the time as a coping mechanism, which is a really, Nascenti, every once in a while she strikes gold because that is a really good read on Wolverine. But now, maybe, or maybe not, I don't know, because now I'm going to turn the floor over to the two of you with plenty of modern day spoilers. Go.
Well, not plenty, but Fariha, since you got that page, you should start.
So the thing is that all the reality warping that's happening, that's actually was put into one page in Wolverine 7, right? Like for the
7.
Yeah, for the X of Swords in one page by Josh Cassara. It's like the whole like everything that reality warping was going on, it was actually taken into one wordless page by Cassara when he's fighting that
Summoner.
Yes.
Yeah, in Black Spoke.
Yes, and I actually have the original page of that, and I look at it every day. So when I watched it, when I was reading it, I'm like, Josh.
No, but the thing is this: that's why Wolverine could defeat Summoner so easily, because he was trained. He has been through this before. So when he was like jumping into the different realities, universe, half universe or dying universes in Black Spoke, he could withstand all the changes, whereas Summoner might not be as as attuned to that. So that was really the spoiler here, I thought.
It's interesting.
Well, I'm glad I didn't see that. I didn't catch that part of it, but yeah. But as I was looking at, I'm glad that two of us also got that. And I only got it because I look at that original page every day. It's just there. Like I'm watching it when I'm reading it, and then I'm like, hold up,
hold on.
Yeah. So that's all there is to it.
I guess I genuinely didn't know what you were going to bring up, and as I was reading it, and then you mentioned that it connects somehow to X of Swords. I thought you were going to connect it maybe to, and again, full spoilers, when he stabs Saturnine and she gives him the vision of kind of the future where he's the only one left because he's undying, but it's useless. Like, it's just pain. And I didn't, I just thought maybe you were going to connect this to that because, Wolverine gets crucified an awful lot and left for undead. Yeah.
That's like every Wolverine story. Yeah. So we are used to that.
Well, folks, we have come all the way to the end of this Proteus discussion, which again is one of the main reasons we even wanted to do this. But we have another 10 issues to get through of X-Men for the Phoenix Saga. So next episode, it's going to be a big one because a lot of classic X-Men issues fit in. Plus, it has the debut of Emma Frost, Kitty Pryde, and Dazzler. So here is your homework if you want to read along with us next time. We're reading Uncanny X-Men 129 to 131. And then during 129, there's a break for training or something. And these classic X-Men issues happen in this order during that break. 36, 35, 34, 39, and 20. Personally, I think you should just read all of 129 to 131 and then read those issues. Also, if for some reason you skipped Classic X-Men 7 earlier on, which shows what Emma was doing around the Sentinels picking up Scott and Jean in Uncanny X-Men 98 through 100, this would be a good time to read that as well. And also, please listen to ABBA's Gimme, 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 parentheses, A Man After Midnight, because in my you'll learn more next episode, but I strongly associate that song with Dazzler's debut, and we might even risk a copyright claim to play it on the episode. So now that I've outlined everything happening next issue, any final parting thoughts on finally reading this together in a post-Hoxpox world? I'll start with Tyler and then we'll end with Fariha.
I don't really have a lot of thoughts that have not articulated throughout this episode. So I mean, I think we are getting to the point where I think Fariha is finally on board, and not like
Always
so
on
many.
board.
No, it's like I have to read so many.
Yeah, but you've been on board with hanging out with us.
Yeah.
I think the difference is that you're on board on reading X-Men now.
X-Men now.
I don't know.
Yes,
Is that true?
That's true. That's 100% true. Because the thing is, like, I don't know how I would feel about this issue if without the current status quo.
Yeah.
But even with, but it's, even then, this is significantly better than what we've been reading all this time. And by the way, I know we spoiled everything with Hoxpox, but guess what? Even Marvel Unlimited, when you end with this issue, it says that, hey, look, go read Hox 1. I'm like, why? What do you know? So it's not just us who are telling you this. It's Marvel also telling you that you should, after you read this, go read Hox 1. So, I mean, like I said, I think after this is the more exciting parts coming up. The biggest thing, that Phoenix Saga that everyone cannot stop talking about, is coming up. And then finally I'll get to read it. So I'm excited. Guys.
Excellent. Well, I mean, this whole sequence, and especially these 4 issues in specific, really illustrates something, because Tyler and I have read these in isolation before many times over. But what we now know to be true is what, Fariha?
X-Men is better when it's read together.
Yeah, and I'm so happy if you're listening to this and reading along with us, because honestly, I don't know if I've ever loved these issues as much as I've loved them this time around. And I'm so excited to finally get to this, because this was the whole genesis of this project. But we're not done, because we have to get all the way to the Dark Phoenix Saga before we take a season break. So stick with us here on our Epic X-Men Reread, presented by Crushing Comics. And on behalf of myself, Tyler, and Fariha, until we next see, hear, and speak to you, please be well.
Bye.